Hello, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here today, and very happy to see many friendly faces among the audience. So first of all, our paper is called Generative AI, Systematic Review of Related Interfaces and Interactions. A quick look about our research group with our coordinator, George Caridakis, being here today with us. Also, he's the professor and the coordinator of the research group and the spin-off Insane. Our fields are the intelligent systems and HCI, first of all, in digital cultural heritage management. We have a group with 10 and more postdoctoral researchers and doctoral students, and 5 and more active research projects. First of all, we did our research. The first field that we were researching was the education. We see that we have a confusion around AI roles and interfaces that erode critical thinking by hiding too much or automating too aggressively. The second field that we checked was cultural heritage. We see that the curators fear that automated experiences will distort the meaning, and people best positioned to guide design with cultural experts are often missing from the process. And the third field was arts and creative technologies. Our research and literature show that many artists feel lost in overly complex or overly simple interfaces. No vices drawn in unfamiliar vocabularies, while the veterans were battling to limits and version chaos. So behind the buzzwords, the artist's voice is too often drowned out by the system defaults. So what the research is about, first of all, we find 95 case studies the last 3 years, of course. The research fields was the 3 previous, education, heritage, arts, and creative technologies. And we see how they were related and integrated with the system interfaces, their interactions, and the user experiences. We follow a Prisma methodology at first. Those are the keywords that we decided to work on. Generative AI, Gen AI, and you can see all the other ones. And first of all, we add them all in Scopus. I mentioned that is only the last 3 years. We have found 5,049 articles. Then we removed all the duplicates and we found 307. And we use a 3-pass filter. You can see the 3 filters. First of all, the article must represent a case study. Second, it will be explicitly discuss user interfaces or user experience, and it will be related to one of our 3 target domains that we discussed earlier. So we go to 75 articles, and by using consensus, we added also 20. We check them also, any duplicates were being removed. And we finally go to 95 articles that we split into those 3 categories. You see we have too many in the education, in arts and heritage, and other researchers equally take some of the articles and started to investigate them. So we make this investigation by using 7 questions. What are those questions? First of all, question 1, how is Gen AI applied at the interface level? Second question is, how is Gen AI applied at the interaction level? Question 3, how does Gen AI impact user experience? What are the modalities in the next question? How can explicit end-to-end user workflows be identified? Question 6, what design phase guidelines or recommendations are provided? And what limitations are noted and future research directions are suggested? Of course, we have some limitations. First of all, the keywords were selected by the authors. We make an abstract level screening because there were too many articles. We have an experience dimension focused on 50 dimensions, and each article was classified based on its most prominent experience theme, because they have some articles that have 2 or 3 of those themes, so we take the most prominent. So the articles also that provided relevant context but did not clearly answer the question were labeled as unknown, and we take articles only from Scopus and consensus. So let's see our results. In the first question, how is Gen AI applied at the interface level, we can see that the winner is conversational interface, and second is the graphical user interface. As you can see, and follows with less results, the multimodal interface, the game-based, the voice, the virtual, adaptive touch and gesture. In the second question about how Gen AI applied at the interaction level, first of all, interaction type of conversational is the winner, and second is manipulating and collaborating. In the third question about user experience dimensions that observed in every study, we see that engagement and usefulness are the most dominant, following the emotional. In the fourth question, what modalities are employed, we see that more than 3 modalities was the result with the most answers, then only text, the opposite, and text and image was the third. About the fifth question about how can explicit end-user workflows be identified, we see that users pose questions in natural language through a chat interface, so the system retrieves relevant information and provides responses grounded in search citations. Also, user inputs prompts to generate an initial artifact, and then iteratively they refine it through feedback loops or testing. So retrieval workflows, as we say, are dominant in education. Third, the simulation and role-playing workflows, the user engage with AI-driven personas in simulated scenarios, often for training, assessment, or critical thinking. And the immersive interactions and embodied workflows, the users interact in VR, AR spaces or with social robots, and real-time AI responses are triggered by voice, gesture, or gaze. This is very important that we see that only 2 in 95 articles were explicitly articulated design phase strategies for Gen AI integration. And this is those 2 design phase strategies, the value-sensitive design and the user-centered prototyping. Let's see the first one, the value-sensitive. In this study, they use a structured 3-phase process. They make an empirical phase, first of all, eliciting stakeholder values. The second step was a conceptual phase where mapping values to design principles. And finally, in the technical phase, they apply principles to UI design, RAG pipeline setup, and prompt engineering. The second article, they use the center prototyping. In this study, they first gather early insights with the Wizard of Oz simulations and prompt generation surveys. They do stakeholder values directly inform AI integration in code design workshops. They made 3 iterative rounds of prototyping to refine UA layout and RAG configuration, and prioritize user feedback loops was the final stage from concept to deployment. So about question 6, what design phase guidelines or recommendations provided? We see a critical gap in current GAI system development, and the lack of design phase strategies raise concerns around the stakeholders' misalignment, the unintended consequences, and missed opportunities for inclusive, ethical, and transparent design. Finally, some limitations we see. First of all, we have the output quality consistency, where robustness and error handling remain critical development needs. Second, the interaction of UI design gaps, where studies reported limited multimodal support and unclear feedback. And the generalizability and sample constraints, where several studies use small or homogeneous user groups. We have also ethical bias and privacy concerns about data misuse, plagiarism and bias were prevalent. Lack of explainability and transparency, where users often cannot understand how or why Gen AI systems make their decisions, and systems suffered from slow processing or hardware demands and technical performance limitations. Finally, the 2 last limitations were the absence of longitudinal evaluation, where few studies examined long-term use or real-world deployment effects, and the prompt engineering gaps where users struggle with prompt formulation and system expectations. For future research directions, in our opinion, we think that explainability and transparency is very important, where clear research attribution, error reporting, and model rationale are needed to build trust and mental clarity. The development of institutional AI policies and bias detection frameworks, more training programs, assistive prompt tools, and community-driven refinement workflows. Also, we need to expand support for multi-language adaptive avatars and gamified engagement, and to shift from lab studies to field deployment with multi-session user tracking to evaluate lasting impact. So the key implications, in summary, first of all, this is not a technical gap regarding the design, it's a human one. Future systems must begin with ethical, participatory, and user-centered frameworks, not as an afterthought, but as a foundation. Modalities become more multimodal or the interfaces, so we must ask, does this complexity improve clarity or confuse? The interaction, if trust erodes, Gen AI systems fail regardless of how advanced their models are. And about the prompts that the heart of the system, in order to evaluate the results, researchers need to know the exact instructions and behavior that the system follows. So education, future most promptly the studies between the three categories, suggesting it's the primary domain for real-world experimentation. This is where design ethics, personalization, and explainability must be proven, because the stakes involve human learning and agency. And as a conclusion, it's not just a tool, Gen AI, it's a transformative medium for interaction, but like any medium, it reflects the intentions of its designers. So if we want systems that are inclusive, transparent, and empowering, then our design and research practice must evolve accordingly. Thank you very much.
Iterate some examples of your work, of how because it's difficult to focus on exactly what.
Sorry, I can hear you.
Some examples.
Yeah.
If you can tell us a couple of examples you've tried out, so it's easier for us to.
From the articles, you mean some examples of what they were saying, or how we do?
Conclusion. So you're saying that that certain things have to be done differently. So do you have examples of what you looked into before coming to these conclusions?
Yes, we see that in some fields like education, they were also the artistic environment inside and the heritage, but they were not very sufficient how they were working. Many of these topics were not very clear, so we will try to. That was a preliminary work, so we must go and search deeper. Yes, that's the next step, to create a model, because all this work was doing manually. We try to do it manually, all the research. So all the researchers involving this process try manually to read every article and identify those questions and their responses.
I was wondering about your suggestion to show the prompts. I think it was the next slide.
Here.
Yeah, so I wonder what is the motivation for that? I mean, of course, let's share, let's be open, but is it for transparency or is it for applicability? What is the idea behind sharing the prompts in your suggestions?
I will say that both. First of all, we try first of all for applicability and to see how those prompts are going to work in the future in same situations, but transparency is also very important.
First of all, it's interesting work because we are all wondering what's happening with the interfacing and interacting with AI. I have some questions relating to the methodology and the current state of the field. Now, what you did is a literature review. Went to Scopus, you put these keywords on the left, I guess, any of those.
Yes, inside Scopus, yes.
You use a lot the term Gen AI or generative AI, which seems to be phased out now. People just use the word AI and they mean this technology. Very often, there are interactive systems that AI is hidden behind. I mean, the streaming algorithms that were presented earlier, recommendation systems very often have AI. And they don't refer anymore as AI. We know that it's just a fact. So you won't find it as a keyword. But on the other hand, because this is a very accelerated field with the technology moving very, very fast, as you said, very often looking just in scientific papers, scientific publications is not the best way to look into the development and the practice. I'll give you an example. In foreign language learning, I did a survey earlier. It's very few publications, but yet there are hundreds of applications which have been developed. They have a strong AI component. They are widely used because it's so fast-moving field that it's not perhaps the best way to just look into scientific papers in order to identify patterns. Now, on the other hand, it's still very interesting what you did. I just wonder why you took these three areas of human activity. I would just focus in one of them because by themselves, all three of them are very important and very interesting and not necessarily related.
Yeah.
So that might create a fuzziness in the results and in the scope of your research. And the interesting thing I saw, if I understood correctly, despite the fact that you started off over 500 papers and publications, you ended up that only 2 of them had a thorough design process. I think this needs a further discussion. Why? We have tools and methods. I have in front of me the Amersi et al., the Microsoft people who have defined guidelines for designing human AI interactive systems with very precise guidelines, which are supposed to be the best set of guidelines. I would focus on those and see how much they've been used by practitioners, how much they've been adopted, because the guys in Microsoft say, look, it's very important the design phase, but also the follow-up when something goes wrong, the continuous support of the users, the continuous improvement of the technology, etc. All these aspects are very important now. And the results you got on prompt, I'm not sure where I agree. Some people believe that prompting natural language is the new programming language. It's like we used to write the code in
the past
with programming languages, and now we write the way program. It doesn't need to be all the prompts transparent to the user. Other aspects of the process need to be transparent and exposed. So, yeah, it's interesting work. Congratulations. I think we are very much interested in this, but perhaps
yes, that's the next step. That's the next step. George.
Thank you, Nikos. Really interesting points and valid, meaning that this is just the beginning of a research direction, not only to research and study the interaction, but also optimize the interaction with direct AI systems. So we're not interested in interaction with systems that integrate AI. So only direct with Gen AI systems. This is and regarding the topics is because the research direction will focus on creative Gen AI interaction, and this is why we focused on it. So we will probably have another version of this work on a journal, and then we'll move on to optimizing the actual interaction and the experience overall. And hopefully in the panel in the afternoon, we'll have interesting points on that. Yes, thank you.
Thank you for the great work. And I think this is a question not for you, but probably for the community. Okay. How people would react if we would include, because I want to follow up to Nikos' comment, archive papers. Most of the papers, and highly cited papers nowadays about generative AI, is they are just put up on the archive. They are not reviewed, but they are like hundreds and hundreds of citations, very influential papers. So would you include non-peer-reviewed papers in your systematic literature review, given the topic?
Yes, of course, we want to do this one, but in this paper, we decided to follow this direction, to take... Yes, because there are already too many. So we were 4 people working for this for 4 months. So we needed to read manually each paper. So it was a huge work to do. But in the future, we will also thinking adding more papers and without limitations.
maybe just a very quick add on that. My personal belief is that it could be some kind of a community natural selection. If a paper is well cited and accepted, even if it goes to peer review, it would again be cited. So I would include as well archive papers. Plus, we all know the problems of the current peer review process. There's a bit of there are pros and cons. Yeah, great. Let's thank our.
Okay, thank you very much.